Hello, and welcome to this Christian Walk, the show where no topic is too taboo to empower you on your walk with God. I'm your host, Marley B., and today it is my privilege to welcome you to the conversation. We are going to discuss the perception versus the reality of being a preacher's kid. So I had the opportunity to speak with three preachers' kids who are going to be talking in depth about their experiences as youngsters and how the impact of being a preacher's kid and the perceptions and the expectations of that has impacted them both negatively and positively in their youth growing up and even now as adults with families in their adulthood. So with all that being said, let's get into it. All right, here we go. Season finale. Y'all ready for this?
Let's go.
All
Let's
right.
go.
Let's go.
Officially welcome to this Christian walk. I have bona fide preacher's kids here with me. I want to first get you guys introduced. So I'm gonna ask you to give me your name, give me a little background about your, foundation or growing up as a preacher's kid there. Katisha, I'm gonna start with you.
All right. So, hello, everybody. I am Katisha. I am the sibling of two boys, and my mother has been a preacher for all my life. And my father was a preacher, I'd say, for a few years of my life. So, that is my
A few
story.
of the early years or the later
A,
years.
a few of the earlier years.
Okay. Okay. All right. And you say you're the sibling of two brothers.
Yeah, I have two brothers.
You
Yep.
have two brothers. You okay, so it's three of y'all together. Got it. Got it. And what denomination did you grow up?
Grew up, so it was a combination, Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, and then we went to Holiness. So, yeah.
Oh, well, that one was definitely easier to say. So I know you was glad to switch to that one. So that's cool. So moving over to Veronica.
Hello, everyone. I am Veronica. I am the baby girl of six. Both of my parents have been past preachers all of my life. And when I was 13, my father became a pastor of a church. We are non denominational.
Nice, nice. Okay, and then here in this nice steel frame with these lovely coils is Joe. Joe, give me a little background on your foundation there as a preacher's kid.
Yeah, I am the fourth sibling. Grew up as there was fourth, and also in the PAW Pentecostals Assembly of the World, aka the Paul. Um,
The fall. I never heard of
Third
that.
generation father was third generation preacher.
Oh,
Stepfather, I'm sorry, and father.
stepfather and father. Wow. So you were your biological dad was in the house. You were a preacher's kid under him, and then your mom remarried and to another preacher.
Stepfather and mother both ministering, I say at the age of 8. And then also my biological father started ministering in my teens. And him and his wife remarried and started a church.
Wow. Okay. So what this topic is all about, first of all, thank you guys for the introductions. Thank you guys for being here once again. I think this is an important conversation because the perception versus the reality of being a preacher's kid, I think we can get a chance to kind of clear that up, right? Because it's so many, for the most part, you get either one extreme put on you or another, either goody two shoes or just this wilding out bad kid that is still able to get up early and go and do the church thing, but secretly is just can't be trusted, a little out there, fighting around, promiscuous, womanizing on the male side of things there. So, I want to just kind of get to the nitty gritty. Like, I mean, are these fair assessments? This is pretty much, I don't want to make it seem like I'm the only one. This is the stuff that you guys have heard, correct?
Yeah.
Right, so,
Oh yeah.
so I know it's kind of like, and then as adults, I think it's so important to be able to process it in retrospect, and even now, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like that's still title. Preacher's Kid is something that it follows you your whole life. Do you still feel the same way? Do you feel like it changed since you've been grown, Veronica?
I do not. I do not. Actually, and being that baby of six, four of them are boys. So they, I think, get it harder than what I did. I kind of learned from them. But even now, in the things that they do, I hear people say, and your daddy a preacher, because that's the first thing that come out of their mouth. So no matter what they do, you don't get away with it, no matter what.
So even as a grown person, what about you, Katisha?
Same thing. You do not get away from it. Once you're PK, you're always a PK. And it's funny, people may not know what anything else is, but they find out you're PK. Oh, you a PK. I'm like, yeah, what's that mean? What's that supposed to mean? Oh, I know about y'all. Well, what do you know about us? Yeah. Get it all the time.
And I know that, and that's how it is. Oh, I know about y'all. And it's like, really? Do you know me?
Right. Do you really know me?
Exactly.
Do you really know me? And do you feel the same way about that? Is that the same? You still feel like the PK never left, Joe? You still wear it?
Nah, I think it left. Depending on the circles you run in. So I rebelled, which we might talk about, but depending on what age we're talking about. So of course, through high school, we literally was in church so much. I would say I didn't do my homework because I was in church. I mean, so people already knew that I was like, they were like, that's the preacher kid. And so I used to, they knew in high school, but as I started growing up and doing my own thing, kind of left the church scene outside of the church. No one really knew. And if they saw me out and about in the secular sense, out there in the streets, themselves, they would be like looking at me like I was looking at them like, what you doing here? But they would look at me like, well, I know you supposed to be a preacher kid, and I go, well, I know you supposed to be in the church too. So it didn't stick with me, I would say, through growing up. I kind of rebelled. I don't run in those same circles either, in the same communities of PAW establishments.
And I like how thank you for being honest, first of all, about that. And then commonly, a lot of preachers' kids leave the church. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because, and a lot of times it's because of the expectations of the people. It can be sometimes the expectations of the parents who are also, and it got to be kind of weird because you know how you feel about your pastor, right? It's my pastor, but this is also your parent. So it's like you're disappointing them two times over, and the expectations is two times over, so do you think that the pressure helped push you away from it, or what do you think the primary reason you wanted to get away from that circle, Joe?
I don't say wanted to get away or just grew away. I don't know if I wanted to get away, but I know the rebellion came for me. It was I would say because of my stepfather. He was like I said, very strict. You'll hear the story like depending on what organization, some of the rules in the church were just ridiculous. Even for my sisters or females, you could they used to say earrings would send you to hell. A dress, tight pants.
Too.
Those will send you straight to hell. Makeup, simple stuff. And for boys, it wasn't the clothes, but it was just the whole demeanor and concept of just being this mini deacon, and it wasn't me, but just for me, it's just I grew apart from just watching, and I saw my stepfather And yeah, he was the preacher, but he's also my stepfather. So I didn't have the same respect or respect for him. It was like, man, this is my stepfather, and he's a preacher. So people would say, for example, "Oh, you got the best daddy in the world." From the outside looking in, people wanted that, and I'm like, man, this is just a man. This is just my stepdad, and I just parted ways. We didn't have a tight relationship. I didn't see. I rebelled. Let's put it that way.
And I like how you touched on jealousy, because I can see it going both ways as a preacher's kid. You have those people that are jealous because, oh man, because they love, a lot of times we love our pastor. We adore them. We put them on pedestals, which I think is a mistake. People don't believe that no person belongs on a pedestal, right? You know what I'm saying? Now, I think that's a mistake, but a lot of times we do that. We put those people on there, and because of that, it's like, wow, that's your dad. You can be around them. They're jealous on that sense, and then they're jealous on the sense that you feel like you have some kind of privilege. Have you experienced that? Any of those, Veronica?
Oh, of course, of course. Especially when my parents became pastors of a church. It was, like if we had a field day or if we had church trips, and you got to do this because your dad's a pastor, or things like that. And what I knew from when they was just ministers was, growing up, I used to, the kids we would play with in the church, but then they couldn't come over the house, and then they were like, oh, my mom said we couldn't come over there with y'all, da da da. And they would say it then. They've said things, and I knew it came from their parents because we were young. And kind of on the same lines with Joe, like some of the people didn't believe, like the wearing the nails, having polish on and earrings. My mom let us do all of that. So it wasn't the fact of we were kids. So, and I remember, like, we would get our allowance, and our church was next door to a Family Dollar. And every Sunday after church, we be in Family Dollar, my little aunt and I, we be getting our fake nails and all of this stuff. And we got the fake makeup, and we would have all this stuff. And we were Jezebel, as they would say. But my mom let us do that because we were kids, and she didn't want to take that away from us. But we heard it back from the kids, and we knew their parents had been saying it. But then when we come home, my mom, our house, because we weren't allowed to go to people's house, that's a different story. But our house was the house that everybody in the neighborhood came to. So it was totally different. The church people didn't allow their kids to come over. Well, a few of them that were actually friends of my mother would let theirs come over and spend the night with us. But the neighborhood kids, we were the house everybody came to. They couldn't wait for us to get home and be here and be eating dinner with us as if they were one of the kids. So, but the church people, oh yeah, we were better than them and couldn't do this because we thought we were better than them, and it wasn't even like that.
And what was your experience with jealousy as a preacher's kid, Katisha?
Similar to Veronica. So we had kind of a group that we all used to congregate with at the church. And so those were the families that we tend to be around most of the time. And outside of that group, pretty much people were just like, they really didn't know who we were or didn't know the quality of people that we were. They had one thought process of us. And if you were kind of in this group of ministers' kids and, all of us that, ate bread together, literally, then, there was a whole nother side of us. But, just like Joe and Veronica said, there was times where my mom was on the strict side when we were growing up. Like, literally, we couldn't listen to secular music. We couldn't watch secular things on the TV, no makeup, no nothing. It took forever for me to even get my ears pierced, right? It was a long process, and I had to beg and beg and beg and beg and beg. So, we've gone through those things, kind of both perceptions versus reality, all that good stuff growing up. And it's just one of those things you learn to kind of just toss it over your shoulder and keep it moving.
So this group of preachers kids, was it like a clique? Was it like us versus them? Was that the perception you think that people got?
It could have been.
Like
I was young.
PKs. Did y'all have like
it was? I mean, it was like the ministers and the preachers' kids. And then I don't know. It was we kind of just were together because our parents were together all the time, right? Because even in Paul, we were in church all day. And when I say all day, like we were literally in vacation Bible school or Sunday school. From Sundays, it was Sunday school. We got out of church about 3:30, 4 o'clock. We ate dinner and then we went back for evening service at like 6:30, 7 o'clock, right? So all day Sundays throughout the week we had church. If you weren't in church, you were having choir rehearsal or the nurses board meeting. Like there was always something that we were involved in. And so, I think naturally we just, because we were always together, were always together, right? But people outside of that I don't think you really understood that, especially as kids. You just know, oh, you prefer to be with them. It's not really I prefer to be with them. That's who I'm always with. So why not make that work?
We're part of the always crew, because that's what it is. If it's always y'all at every service, these are the people gonna be there no matter what. I can see how it could get a little cliquish.
It's
and
literally
then
if the doors of the church are open, we're there.
Oh, got it. Now let me talk a little bit about expectations from your parents, right? Because do you feel like that you were expected to be exemplary in everything that you did? Like, did you feel any kind of pressure about doing that at any point during your childhood or even now in life? Let's start with you, Joe.
Yeah, I would say first of all, there's a lot of expectations, and there's pros and cons. So I don't know if we break it down.
We can break it down.
I'll start off with the expectations. It was kind of like looking back on it, there were pros in the expectations. So leadership, being outspoken in front of people, that's a skill that we were forced to learn. How many of us was forced to pray when we didn't really want to, right? They call you up there because that's the person they knew was their kid. So they're making you pray, making you get in front of an audience. So those are some pros, life skills that actually kind of turned out to be quite helpful. In other sense, expectations to maybe know the books of the Bible, because that's like you're supposed to know verses, supposed to know how to read, in front of folks. Not supposed to get in trouble ever. Not supposed to run. So if there was a particular kid or group in the church that went left, if you ever got caught going with them, it was like, you ain't supposed to be with that crew. You ain't supposed to be with those kids. So expectations to kind of stay away from trouble. I guess that's like which reduced the amount of fun. Let's put it that way. So that's why I became so sneaky. So that's how about y'all?
Could you say that would promote some sneakiness in there, Katisha and V?
It definitely does. It definitely does. Like I said, like my mom was very strict, right? And I always had, whether she said it or not, I always had the feeling, oh, I have to be perfect, or I have to act this way, I have to present myself this way. And I remember a defining moment for me. I was 25 years old and I got pregnant out of wedlock. And I was like, I felt so bad because I'm like, oh my God, it's going to reflect on my mom. Now, mind you, I'm grown. I'm living in a whole nother state, paying my own bills. I already graduated college, living a good life, all of this, right? But I thought back to the fact that my mom is a minister and a pastor, and how is this going to reflect on her, right? And this is at age 25. I'm well out of her house. But that expectation to kind of be perfect and do everything accordingly, the way it was supposed to be done, all of that comes into play. And so you do have that expectation. And then there's the reality of it, right? Like, I'm human, right? And so my mom, like when I told her that, she was like, no, like you're not disappointing me at all. She's like, I raised you the best I could. And when you turned 18, you became an adult to make your own decisions, right? She was like, I trust that, you would go by the word and, what you've been instilled in you, but you make your own choices, and that's just life. And, once she said that, it kind of like lifted a ton off of my shoulders, literally for the rest of my life. And since then, it's just kind of like, you know what? I'm my own person.
And so what would you say about those expectations to be perfect, B?
So I actually agree with both Joe and Katisha. So younger, the expectation was every Sunday you knew you were going to church. There was no question about it. So that's why I said we didn't go to nobody's house because you knew Saturday you couldn't be at nobody's house because you had to have your clothes out, everything out because you're going to church. And if they don't go to your church, it wasn't that they don't go to church, they don't go to your church. So I don't know what goes on in their house. I don't know what goes on in the church, but I know what goes on here. So that's what that expectation was. You knew you were going to be on the kids choir. You knew you were going to be an usher. You knew you were going to be junior assistant, you were going to be these things. It was no question about it, right? That was always there. They put their foot down. But remind you, I said I'm the baby of 6. So by the time those teenage years came, my brothers had already made all the mistakes there was to the point my mom was like, you know what? You're going to live your life. I know what I raised you to do, and you just got to have to follow. Everything else, you make the bed, you're going to lie in it by the time they got to me. But was I sneaky? Yeah, because I still wanted to be the angel. So yes, I did some things that were sneaky. And I remember I was actually the secretary of the church at the time. I was 19 years old and I was dating this guy, and I had them went out because I'm 19 years old, right? So I can spend the night, do whatever I want. Mind you, I was still in my parents' house, but we had went on the weekend and we went to the beach or whatever. That following week I came back, and as normal I was going back to get the announcements and things from the pastor, my dad, and someone stopped me. One of the members was like, "Oh, you're not the secretary no more." I was like, "Oh, I'm not."
She just took
No.
your secretaryship because you was dating somebody?
Yeah, my daddy fired me and didn't even tell me.
And you was 19 at the time.
Wow.
How did that make
But
you feel? How did that
I
make you
actually
feel?
found it funny because I'm like, I done been with him all week, but he just couldn't tell me because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. And I was okay with it. And then the reason is that when we talked about it, because of course, it's daddy, I'm gonna go and say so, right?
Mhm.
So when we talked about it after later on, I was like, yeah, daddy, you fired me, you didn't tell me. He said, well, you do shacking up, even though it was just spending a weekend, but I was shacking up.
Oh,
And you can't hold the office in the church.
that was old
Oh yeah, I
pre-shacking.
do know
They
that.
felt the
You're right.
shacking coming. They felt the shacking coming. They like, let's stop this right now.
Yep.
Turn in your stapler.
Yep. I got my job back, but later on. But I mean, the expectations, everything you knew, like it was there. It was to put. I wouldn't say. Well, for me, now my brothers will have a different story, but for me, I don't think it was because of what people would think. But to him, he didn't want me to think that I was special and could get away with things that he would sit other members down for. That's the way I took it.
Okay. So let's talk about identity. Did you find it hard to find yours as a PK? Like, did you feel like it was just like, okay, this is who you're gonna be for the longest time, and then you like, I know in your experience, Joe, like you kind of grew up, you grew out, and you kind of, found your way that way. But as far as like your identity, like, do you feel like it was trying to be put on you by your, whether it's by your parents or by the church or by the position of being a PK, and then you found it later? What was that like? Let's start with you, Katisha.
I think I found it later, right? I battled a lot with, the whole perception versus reality, and trying to figure out who I was. And similar to Joe, as I grew up, really for me, when I got to college is kind of when I started dropping out of, I would say, church, quote unquote. Even though I was involved in, gospel choir in college and all that good stuff, because it was still, it's in me. So it's going to be there. But it was my opportunity to say, I don't have to go to church every Sunday. I don't have to go to church every Friday. I don't have to go to church every Wednesday. I don't have to, get up every Saturday morning and
I'm
do
free.
X, Y, Z. Right? Yeah. So that was me. And I found myself really like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this time that I have? Right. So that's when I kind of realized, okay, a lot of my identity is tied to doing things at the church or involving the church. But as time went on, and the more and more I kind of sought myself about things that I like to do and enjoy, that's when I kind of, begin to kind of go out on my own. And that's kind of how it's been ever since. So really for me, it happened during my college years.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like your parents were like, look, was it like, okay, this is who you need to be? Or did you just pick that up based off of what you felt it was like to be a preacher's kid?
I think I just picked it up off of what I felt it was and what other people were impressing upon me that it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, my dad, he had some ministering and preaching in him, but my dad has also had some straight, street hustler stuff in him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of saw that side, and I'm like, okay, it again created a battle. Like, okay, people aren't perfect, right? Preachers aren't perfect, because again, growing up, especially being in and around a lot of ministers and preachers, there's this perception that they're perfect. And, similar to Joe, it's like, some people, I'm like, he is not perfect. Like, I've been around him in XYZ and I know XYZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So battling that. But my mom was always supportive in me really kind of finding myself,
Mm-hmm.
and not allowing people's impressions to dictate how I act. So.
I get that. I get that. And what was it like finding out? Because once again, this is your parent and your pastor. So what does that do to you when you find out that they're not perfect as a child? Because I feel like that, when we are, even whether you're a preacher's kid or not, when you find out your parents are, when they fail you, when they disappoint you, it's something that stick with you. But I
Right.
feel like it might be a little bit different when your parent is also your pastor, your spiritual leader too. So
Right.
what did that do for you?
I think from my dad's perspective, it wasn't a whole lot, right? My dad, when we were younger, was kind of in and out. Like, my parents were divorced for 26 years before they got remarried, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that time, I may not have seen my dad a lot. So for him, it wasn't, I was just like, oh, okay, it is
Mm-hmm.
what it is. For my mom, it really didn't come actually until I grew in my older years, right? And it's just kind of like, she'll do stuff. Even now, she may say something. I'm like, Ma, that ain't right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not right. And my mom is like the sweetest pot. Like, she is, cream of the crop, everything.
Yes.
I get my spirit from her, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I still have that expectation that she's almost perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when she says something or does something, I'm like, Ma, that's not right. And I find myself trying to like reconcile myself, like, you didn't just say that to her. But I'm like, it's true. Like, I'm trying to, help everybody be better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's there, but I find myself, I'll tell her like, hey, Mom, come on now. Like, you got to think about it this way, or, why don't you approach it this way? So it's still there, but it's more so in my adult years where that feeling has come with my mom. Whereas in my dad, it was all throughout my life.
Okay. And like you said, your mom to you was near perfect. So it's like you can't have her coming down from grace, huh? It's just like,
Right.
like, I need you to get back up there. Hurry up. Get back where I need you.
Yeah.
I get that. So it's almost like you're reciprocating the expectation that she might have put on you when
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay. I watch a little Frasier, you know what I'm saying? So I get it. I get it. I get it a little bit. So let's talk about V, when you found out, because I know how close you are with your parents, right? So when you found out they weren't perfect, and I know that you might have still not found out about your daddy yet. So you had
Girl,
a
you
little,
know it.
yeah. But
That
how,
is
how did that? What did that do for you? What was that like?
actually, my mom and I were just talking about that today because we were talking about my grandmother, going through her Alzheimer's and some of the stuff. And we could be like, gosh, she mean. Like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was talking today and she was like, that's why I'm working on myself. And I was like, I get it from my daddy. And so she's like, nope, because you could be like me. And it's the truth. Like, sometimes my mouth, and I'm like Katisha said, it just goes off, and I try to reel myself back in, and I'm praying on it hard. But it hit me. My mom, I think it really hit me. Um, after I don't even think I had Jasmine yet. So Yeah, it's been over 8 years when it really hit me, and I saw like she can be jazzy and smart with her mouth,
Mhm.
and it was just like I couldn't believe it. I was taken back.
Mhm.
And it was like she had just had enough. And I've never seen that from her because even with church people, and I've seen a lot from them, then them take a lot and them go in private and cry, and you can hear with the door closed, like, and then you mad. That's another thing too.
Mhm.
But yeah, and then you get mad, but I've never seen her get angry. And then when I started seeing it, and then as time got older, and it's more of, and I think with her neuropathy too, gets a lot to her.
Mhm.
And she even says she has to pray for her attitude, but it's, the pain and things, and she has to pray about her attitude. But it's like she's used to always be so meek and humble and like anything. And even now, sometimes though, I'd be like, "Mom, now you need to tell them leave you alone. You need to stop this." And I'd be like, "You be mean at the wrong time. This is when you need to be talking back."
Like, this is what I need you to go for it now. Now,
Yes, now
yeah.
it's the time. And it don't come. But yeah, my dad, no matter what, I don't care when you see him, he's always the same. It doesn't matter when you're home, work, store, church. Daddy always just always the same.
Okay. So we still waiting on that day for you to find out that he's not perfect. So, but that's good. And that is a blessing. That is good. All right. So Joe, now don't go on both daddies at once, because I know you probably waiting for this, but what did it do to you? And what did it look like when you found out that your dad or your stepdad was not perfect? And then what did that do for you?
Uh, I would say it. I was ready to answer the identity question, but as far as how that translates, I was thinking about, uh, you know, when I found out he wasn't perfect. I don't think I ever thought he was perfect. My stepdad, I just never had that experience.
Mhm.
He came in, yeah, third generation Mississippi PAW preacher,
Mhm.
rod of God, didn't spare the rod. I never really liked him straight up, right? I didn't like the beatings. That was a part of being in the church back then. You get beat all the time. Maybe not in y'all's house, but I remember like certain ministers. I mean, it wasn't uncommon to see a kid get beat in the church, and everybody just look there and be like nodding their head, like, "Yep, she deserved it or he deserved it," and they be like, "Take that kid to the back." Anyone could beat you back. Back in the day, it was okay if somebody beat you. The parents would tell them, but that I guess I'm derailing. Back on
No, no.
topic, as far as when I found out my parents weren't perfect, I would say, well, really, so my parents actually ended up splitting up. My stepfather and mother ended up splitting up, right?
Mhm.
And during their split up, that really tore the church apart, and
Mhm.
literally tore the church apart, and the church was dissolved. And so my stepfather moved back to where he was from, opened up a new church, got remarried, and my mom went her separate ways, and she wasn't a first lady anymore. But I did see the transition between what my mom did and what my stepfather did. And let's just say my stepfather went back to ministry, my mom didn't. So she lived a whole nother lifestyle that I never seen before. And in seeing that different lifestyle option, that was almost unimaginable as a kid to see my mom in a secondary perspective, not a first lady anymore.
So she
Not,
was it an extreme change? It went
I
from not a
wouldn't say
first.
extreme. She didn't go like, to a new age grandma, nothing like that, started twerking and something like that. But just
That's,
she just wasn't a
that's
first lady anymore. So she did things differently. She didn't go to church. She, didn't have a church home. She
mhm.
went out with her friends. She
Oh,
was
she had
single.
church fatigue.
She was single. Yeah, I mean, pretty far as I could say, she just stopped going.
Mhm.
And she moved and whatnot. But as far as him, he went another direction. Either way, my identity really changed as far as my perspective. Uh, you know, not just him watching other bishops and ministers and deacons and all these titles as they looked up to them. the respect of me watching them have respect. I was born respecting my elders because I saw that. You saw your parents looking up to the apostle, the doctor, and you hear them talking about these prophets and this prophetess and evangelists, and you always they look up to them, then you look up to them. Next thing you know, you have this perceived hierarchy, and you also look at the people the same way. But then when you realize that as PK, you start hearing the bad stories. The same apostle or bishop had an affair or got in a fight or was preaching drunk. And then so the respect and the identity of having respect starts to dissolve. And as a person grows older, you start realizing nobody's perfect. And so my perception on all of those as I became older, before how you were a preacher and you said, yeah, I'm preacher such and such or deaconess, or I would just put you on a pedestal. But as I got older, I second guess everybody who's a prophet, everyone who's a prophet, everyone who has a title. I second guess them and I question them. And I realized that, titles are just that and everyone's just a person. And so they have to earn my respect. I don't care if they are a preacher or a minister.
Mm-hmm. And that's true. And you know what? I think that's the realest thing ever, because people should be we should put people that way. We shouldn't just go by the title, because just because you don't landed a title, that does not mean that title is going to always be a reflection of your character. And I think that's a big issue that's happening in the church. Is so many people with titles whose characters are just not in tandem with those titles. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm sure as preacher kids, you guys have seen a lot of disappointing stints in humanity, right? And like Veronica, you had talked about, just people literally verbally attacking your parents as leaders of the church. But just to kind of name, a time where you just were like, I'm just over people because of this situation, because church hurt is real, right? We all get it, right? And I think that we need to acknowledge it, because it's always swept under the rug. We just got to cover it. We can't discuss it. We can't say what's happening. But I don't think if we don't say what's happening, then we can't hold people accountable and change it. I was watching the Aretha Franklin docu-series, and her dad was a prominent pastor in a few places, but most of his career was in Detroit or whatnot, and he was just over this big church. And they would go out on these ministry missions and tours and shout all day and drink and party all night. And he was womanizing, bouncing from room to room, party to party. Like, this is the kind of stuff that is going on, the hypocrisy. You know what I'm saying? And I know hypocrisy, y'all have seen y'all fair share. So I want to just get into it. Veronica, give me a time where you was just like, you know what? I'm sick of this.
I don't even know where to begin. Oh, I don't know where to begin. I honestly don't know where to begin. Um, I'll say, for example, like when Katisha brought up, the whole feeling of how she felt when she got pregnant out of wedlock. So I've seen that firsthand, how that is. And, the people in the church want to shut people out. And I've seen how the one example, just this one girl, and they just wanted to talk about her and shame her and what her mama should have been doing and where her mama should have, had her and watching over her and blah, blah, blah. And how it was my parents. I remember they getting us out of bed one night. We going Walmart, we going to get stuff, and we're taking it to this house for this baby, and we're sitting in the car, and they're in there talking to them and praying with them and things like that. And I remember that Sunday, my daddy getting up in the pulpit and just telling them like this is still a child. We've all made mistakes. It don't matter what that mistakes was, but this is still a human being. This child still deserves love, and the baby deserves love. And it's kind of one of those like who without seeing cast first stone type of speech. And then for people to still at the end of church after all of that and looking at yourself in the mirror, things like that, his whole talk and praying and lifting her up still after church to be talking and about how he was wrong for saying that and blah blah blah, how it was so wrong. And I'm just, yeah, at that point I was definitely over it. And I can honestly say, and my mom was over it too, because then the next one, because my mom said she won't be the first, she won't be the last. And the next time that it happened, same thing, she's buying stuff. If they didn't want to contribute, they didn't have to, but this is what we were going to do as a family, the first family, as she would say. And that's what we're supposed to do in the showing of love. But those same ones, and I remember this one particular lady who did all the talking when it came that train came back around and then it stopped at her door. Then what happened? We had to show that same love. But yet I remember hearing you doing all the talking when that little girl came in.
So wait, what was the train? So she ended up getting
Someone in her circle, very close.
But then she wanted to get quiet then.
Yes.
Oh.
So we had to show that same love. But yeah, I when it comes to that, yeah, I'm over that. I was over it. Still am to this day. Like, so, like when people, oh, did you hear? And it's the whispers.
Yeah.
Such and such daughter, oh, did you hear? She ain't married, and it's like, okay, and what you do last night? That wasn't your husband last night, who you was with.
Right. And it's like, it's nothing else for you to do. We all in this bake sale line, but you don't got to talk about little sister Tisha like that just because she done made a mistake. Yeah.
That's it. No sin's greater than the other. So
exactly.
Yeah. Yep. And when that train come back around and stop at your door, then what? You expect somebody to have grace for you.
It is
there you go.
Track. Yes, definitely. Katisha, what hypocrisy in the church has just made you be like, you know what? I'm done with this.
Oh, I would say probably another pivotal moment in my very own life. I learned to take alcoholic shots from one of those well-known prophets. And literally, it was one of those situations where we went to church, preached up a great old sermon. After the sermon, we're all back at the hotel, throwing drinks back, having a great time. And I'm like, wow, it really was like, wow, okay, this the same group of us that were just, holy rolling in church. And, now we're throwing back shots and literally being taught, no, you got to do this, you got to hold your breath. Like, I was like, okay, like, the afterthought of that is when I really had a wake up call and was like, you know what? I just need my own personal relationship with God, right? This church thing, it ain't really for me. I'll go to church, but I'm not, I can't go in and all in knowing this is what happens. And, that was just one instance, right? And that was, again, during my college years.
Before you go to the next instance, I do want to clarify this. Like, okay, because I have taken my fair share of shots. I'm not taking people their Christendom because they didn't partook of some shots. So I want to put that out there. I want to be real
No.
I don't want to come off as like y'all haven't nobody seen me in the shot line.
No. But I take a shot today, right?
You know what I'm saying? So I want to be cool. But I'm wondering, like, was the hypocrisy because of the imbibing of alcohol itself, or is because they were shunning someone for doing the same thing? What was specifically what got under your skin about it?
It was that combination, right? So, in the pulpit preaching one thing, but doing something totally different. And, I'm thankful to God that, there's still a relationship and, it's changed for him. He's totally committed now. And, he'll attest to, hey, I was in and out, right? I was doing this. And it's funny because a lot of times we'll knock like, oh, somebody's not called just because they're, they're in and out. But when God has an anointing on you, he has an anointing on you regardless.
Exactly.
Right. So it's one of those situations. That's how I've learned to deal with it. It was one of those situations. Do as I say, not as I do. Because God uses vessels in different ways. But yeah, it was one of those things, like, it really caught my eye, like, oh wow, like, we were just talking about this, but yeah, we're doing this. Yeah,
I get that. And I just wanted to make sure I clarified that, because just in the great example of that would be, hey, this podcast wouldn't be going on if I had to be completely away from the shot line before it happened. So, you never know what God gonna do later, but in the meantime, there was a shot around or two before, this happened. Going on to your second example. Go ahead.
that part. I mean, just as things have gone on in life, just seeing the way things are handled. Similar to V's story. Seeing the situations where young ladies will get pregnant out of wedlock, or young teens or get pregnant or whatever, and everything falls on the girl, and her mom should have done XYZ, or should have been, but nothing happens to the young man. It's like, she didn't do this on her own, right? What I don't hear you chastising him. I only hear you chastising her and her parents, right? So the hypocrisy in that. And then, simple as day, preachers in the pulpit talking about, marriage and being sanctified and, all that good stuff. But yet you out there cheating on your wife. So, yeah.
And it's a lot of that, a lot of womanizing that go on in the church.
It is, yeah.
Right. I don't want to be one of those cliche podcast hosts that bring up, oh boy, that was got caught in the video. The one preacher that got caught in a very compromising position. And I swear she had a ring light. It was not nothing like it. He was definitely, he knew he was being filmed. But he was caught very much cheating, very much stepping out, very much being, a womanizer. And then would get up there and shake his finger at, all kinds of, people, and make them feel like they're less than, and that they're going to hell. Right. And I'm saying the Pauls will send you to hell for earrings, and they will be out there womanizing.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing that people are just over it. And I get that, and now that you guys have seen the hypocrisy, you guys have made it through adulthood, right? And I like how Joe was able to point out some of the pros, that he gained from being a preacher's kid. But I'd like to see some of the pros that you guys can attest to. Veronica, what do you say the best thing that being a preacher's kid did for you at this point in your life? Like all of it combined, not just now, but what has it done for you, your existence now?
Having a personal relationship. You have to get it for yourself. You have to read and study the Bible for yourself. So for me, that's what it's done for me. Having made me want to get a closer walk, especially in my adult years. Like, no, I ain't been on this walk the whole time. And just because my parents were preachers and then became pastors, and oh yeah, you just stayed in the church and you the goody two shoe. Oh no. I've done things too. But it helped me on my knees. I knew where to go. I knew where to pray. Train up a child in the way to go, and they will not depart. And when I came back, I realized I'm not coming back to mama and daddy. I'm not just coming back to a preacher. I'm not coming back to a pastor or this church. The church is in my heart. But I'm coming back to Jesus, and that's who I'm asking for the forgiveness of my sins. I'm making a relationship with him. And I think that's what the part about being a preacher's kid has taught more than anything, is because a lot of people, and I've heard them even say, like they're going to their pastor, they have to talk about this, they sin, they're going and they're going to talk it over with their pastor and see where they go from here. But ours, because they were one and the same, I guess you could say. So it was, you got to pray about that. Like we here, we support you, we do, even when we made our mistakes, and don't call mama, call daddy. But when you make those mistakes and you call, he gonna pray for you, but you gotta pray for yourself. You gotta have a personal relationship to be able to pray for yourself. So I think that's the number one thing that really has helped me, especially in this adult life. It really has helped me.
And Katisha?
I think just from a combination of the experiences, compassion. Seeing people go through, seeing how the church responds, both the positive and the bad, and the bad sides. It's really allowed me to be compassionate and not judgeful towards people, because everybody has a story and everybody's walk is not the same, right? I oftentimes think about those little, you know, biblical moments where they'll have like, a man was dressed ragged and sat on the back row and people treated him bad, and then it turns out to be, Jesus, right? So I always try to keep those kinds of thoughts and minds based off of the experiences I've had growing up, as a child whose parents have always been in the ministry, even, grandparents, aunts, uncles. Yeah, it's very heavy. So I would definitely say compassion.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up too, because while you guys have probably seen some very disheartening things, I'm sure you guys have seen some really amazing, heartfelt things that has taken place in the church more than anybody. Well, Joe, before we get into those, I want you to get one of those for me, because I don't want to make it just seem like this is just a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? I want the positives to be exemplified just as much as the negatives, you know what I'm saying? Because I think the fact that, both, just like in everything else, are important, both perspectives of that. So Joe, you spoke on a little bit about, some of the frustrations that you have witnessed in the church. Did you have anything further about that you wanted to say? And I know you wanted to say something about the identity portion, and I haven't forgotten about you. So if you want to talk about how did you find, was that identity given to you, or how did you find it later in life? You can also touch on that for me.
All right. Well, it's funny. I kind of shifted. I can say with the identity and kind of like the identity of when I kind of was through with it, because y'all had moved on to that kind of topic, right? So my identity in my youth, it was just a PK kid following the rules as we talked about, right? But when that teenage year hit, I began, we did get to see the back end of things. So there was other youth that was ahead of us, and they were already teenagers. So we were hitting our teens, they were sitting their 20s. And we got to see, especially at a lot of the conventions, church conventions, those are some of the best places to be when you're talking about the grapevine. So we talking about gossip in the church. Imagine PK kids, all those pastors getting together, spilling the beans on their congregation. And you think those pastors, those parents don't come back at night and say that stuff to the kids or with the kids in the room? So with us PKs, we're hearing all the gossip. We're hearing all the stories and all the hurt that's happening behind the doors of shutting people down, talking about people. We're seeing that, right? So we're seeing the imperfections in people, leadership. We're hearing about behind the scenes things at these conferences, and we're also hanging out with groups, little cliques. A lot of us had unique. They would send us to PK classes or PK rooms, and we would just do stuff. And next thing you know, like we got the same problems or the same background, and we're hanging out. We've made a little clique. But I think we see that we're seeing the same thing as I get older. Once again, I'm looking at the older generation that are above us, and I'm like, I remember one time we had a floor just at a convention just for the PKs or whatever, and they were like, go to that floor and there's refreshments up there. So I'm like, free food, man. We find out they done turned the refreshments room into a bachelor's crib, and there was kissing games and all kind of wannabe grown up spinning the bottle, teenagers, 20-year-old stuff going on. I said, oh, this is what we doing now. Oh, I was on the wrong floor. So as the PK, we started, I got to see a little bit of different, we grew up and started, I say the rebellion side, I guess, as you got older, the kids that weren't younger, sticking to the rules, there was people skipping the classes and doing their own thing. And I found that room and I said, okay, this is what we're doing. So I grew up kind of into a different perspective as a PK, like, hey, I'm rebelling, I'm doing this now. We having some fun, getting in trouble a little bit.
But this as what we do respect, at this stage.
Yeah, at that stage. And then I think towards the end, I was a musician, and my identity as a musician, I got to see I dealt one-on-one with a lot of preachers who were supposed to pay me, deacons and boards who were supposed to pay me. And I didn't get paid a lot of times. And so that's lying to me, not paying me what I was due. People wanting service for free, and I started realizing, some of these, from a musician's perspective and a PK's perspective, having that conversation, a lot of people just knew me as did you hear that guy play? That's Joe. He can play. Child, he can play. Go hear this kid play, and I would go play, and I played all these churches. And for me, my identity became the kid who played at this church, and you want to hear this is such and such his son. Oh, that's your daddy. He's that pastor. Oh yeah, we want to hear you play. And whenever we would travel, for me, I would just become like my identity became a musician. And then there was another conversation around musicians and us hanging out, but there was no particular expectations. I just tried to blend in with the musicians' rules. And yes, there was like womenizing going on, like you mentioned, in the realm of us hanging out after church. A lot of musicians hung out with the deacons. They had their own little clique, and they womanized, and they did some good things. There were some musicians trying to be right. There were some musicians and folks that were not trying to do right, and I hung around both. And so I just kind of picked my own path, and I realized, that we have in the church a variety of people on different levels, and it's really, you got to look at people at the individual level and not say, okay, at this church everyone's crooked or everyone's doing it this way. Everyone's doing it differently. As you get older, you realize that, and you really can't judge. And it's just really at the individual level. So I just broke it down for myself to every time I meet somebody, I give them a little bit of trust, whether, like I said, you're a deacon, pastor, whatever, musician. Me as a PK, I just know no one's perfect, and I've seen it all. I've seen lying bishops, fake prophets, fake evangelists, hoeing musicians, hoeing pastors, preachers' kids, choir directors. And I think we just seen it all, and we're not surprised. So I think that's where it is. I'm not done with it, but I'm just not shocked. You can't shock me by telling me someone got pregnant at church. I'm not shocked.
Right, I get that 100%. And on your behalf, Joe, preachers out there, render on the Caesar what is Caesar's, and render on to Joe what is Joe's. That man playing out here. What is happening? But I get that 100%. But I think that is a lesson that everybody needs to really embrace, though. Really, Joe, really seriously, that we can't generalize when it comes to all preachers, all PKs, all church people, all non-church people. We got to stop that. Right. We got to take people as they come and realize that everybody's path is different. I get, that's what it boils down to. Everybody's path is different. And just because somebody is not on the same level as you are spiritually, morally, doesn't mean that they're not going to get there in their own time. So we got to be careful about how we treat people and how we view people. We can't automatically put people on a pedestal just because they done completed a seminary. Or even like some of them not even completing seminary for real. Because I tell you, I became a minister last week in 3 minutes. Okay, online 3 minutes, and I could have got a parking pass for like $7. But I wasn't gonna do that. But it's some people that's gonna pay that $7 and they're gonna want and expect all of the respect that come along with that parking pass, but they ain't really doing the work. But me, I'm not gonna do it. But I get it 100%. Last thing that I want y'all to kind of speak on, I'm gonna go to each one of y'all. You know, just what do y'all want people to know that y'all feel like are oblivious when it comes to you guys' plight as a preacher's kid? Like, if you can just leave people with one good thought, as to, just keep this in mind when it comes to that. And then you're gonna have those preacher kids that, now y'all grown now, right? But it might be some preachers kids that's in the grow up stage, and they probably just feeling alone or feeling like they never gonna get free, or they never gonna be able to sleep in on Sunday. So whatever the case may be, what final words would you give, Katisha?
I would say well, for one, it won't last always, right? But when you find out someone is a preacher's kid, don't think the worst and don't think the best, right? We're all human. We all err. We all have life, right? So, no, we're not hoes. No, we're not angels, right? We're normal, everyday people. Our parents just happen to choose to be preachers. And, that's just the life that we've lived. We're not preachers. So, don't put that expectation on us.
Mm-hmm. Veronica?
So I'll actually speak to the other PKs that are growing up and those that may be coming in. I will speak to you, and I'm going to tell you that, yep, no, you did not choose this life. Yes, it was your parents' life, but I will say, um, give them grace, because you're going to feel that they don't have time for you. You're going to feel like the church is coming before you. You're going to feel like every family is coming before you. The phone's going to ring during dinner. There's going to be times where you may have made plans and they have to be changed because a member needs something, or something's going to happen that's not going to go your way, and you're going to wonder, where are my parents at, and how to do the boundaries. Give them grace, and I'll say, have those conversations. Let them know how you're feeling. Sometimes parents just don't know. And it was my mom who told us, y'all didn't choose this life, we did. So one way or the other, one of us is going to make sure we attend the game. And they did. One way or the other, one of us is going to make sure we're here. Whenever y'all need something, somebody's going to be here. And no matter what, we're going to always make sure we sit down as a family for dinner. And we're going to make sure we don't answer the phone and interrupt dinner. But it came from us having those conversations. So give them grace and speak to them and tell them how you're feeling. No, you didn't choose this life. Yes, it was their choice, but just give them grace and have a conversation. And like Katisha said, it doesn't last always. And the greater benefit of it is compassion, relationship, friendship, love. You learn a lot, but it's worth it.
Joe, I see your hand up.
That's
Yes,
my
sir.
church clap.
Oh, that was a church clap. Got it. I'm like, oh, he got his hand. Okay.
She should have went last.
Oh, no. You got this, but you know what, Veronica, that was excellent. And I know that is just what somebody needed to hear, because sometimes, being in those circles at the time, you dealing with somebody in the same age as you, or even at a different headspace, that advice might get a little watered down, and they needed it straight just like that, because that right there can really set somebody free and really help whole household. So I thank you for that. And Joe, I'm sure you got a good one. Don't even what do you want people to know about the preacher kid experience?
Wow, I think the last speaker said it best. We have different perspectives, so I'm gonna come at it. I guess something positive-ish from a male perspective. And we'll look at the times. This is not 1980. It's kind of where I grew up in the 80s. Things are very different in the church. And so I really can't speak to what's going on at this time as these new churches pop up and these new ministries are trying to reach the youth. But as a male, I will say, look for your place. Look for your place to provide a service, whether it is your skill, whether you're a vocalist, a musician. Look for an opportunity to insert yourself into leadership and to assist your parents, because all I can say is those skills, they go far outside of church. Being able to speak to anybody, being able not to judge somebody off of what they look like, those things will carry you a long ways in the real world. Because in church, just as they say, come as you are, we know people have come into the church looking like a bum and end up being just a millionaire who was drunk and had a bad day and walked into the church because they felt like they wanted to go to church. I mean, you just don't know who you're going to cross paths with. So just look for opportunities to grow and try not to be, um, so reluctant to be there, because I know oftentimes you don't want to be there, but your parents make you. So look for these opportunities. You know you're going to go anyway, so go ahead and be the best at. If you're going to be the tambourine player, better play that tambourine the best you can play it. And you're going to be the usher, just smile and usher, because that's what you're going to be doing. So, embrace those positions and try to be the best. Make it yours. It's your church. You know what I'm saying? So try to put a little new age swing on it, flavor on what you got to do in there as your job.
Absolutely. Yeah, see, I 100%. See, you closed good, Joe. That was good. All right, that was good, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we remember who we do it for. We are not doing it for people. We are doing it for God. I thank all of you guys for being here. The fact that, through it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, the perception versus the reality of being a PK, you guys maintained and still have developed your own relationship with God. And that at the end of the day is what it's about. People gonna always have some kind of expectation for you. They gonna always want to put some kind of stigma on you, but your identity doesn't come from them. It comes from the Most High. And you guys already all got it. You guys get it. And I thank you all for being here and sharing your experiences with the TCW subscribers and me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Joe, you got to say something with your clapping hands. The picture still, I can't tell.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being here.
Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you so much, Joe, Katisha, and Veronica, for sharing your insights, your experiences. I was truly awakened by some of your insights. So thank you so much. I hope this information was found useful to all of my viewers out there. Please like it, please share it, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. So it's the end of season 1, you guys. We made it. We're going to be coming back soon with more topics and more guests to empower you on your walk with God. I hope you continue to stay with us. So we learned today that generalizing people is just not the way to go. When you think about PKs and preachers' kids, how we put expectations and we go in thinking one way about a person, we should not do that. Just take people as they are. Don't assume. Get to know the person. Don't put yourself out there thinking that you know what's going on when you just don't, because you wouldn't want nobody to do it to you. All right, so keep that in mind the next time you try to have some preconceived notions about someone. All right, now I know on this walk with God, no matter where you are, preacher's kid or not, loving God can be easy. Trusting God can be hard, but I believe we can all get there one step at a time on this Christian walk. See you in season 2. For everybody, because
look at you with the big words. What's that word?
Advantageous.
Oh shit. Hey, did you know that word? No, I don't know.
He don't entertain his foolishness, you know.
Ooh, that's a Scrabble.
I use those. That we are all up to the task. No, don't like that. I'm gonna do another one. Okay. I mean, you're giving me the finger though.
Oh, that's the thing. I'm trying to turn this on.
Oh, I'm like,